Nitesh, hi, good to have you with us. How have you been?
I'm good, really good. Thank you, Ashu. Thanks for taking time and thanks for talking to us. It's really been a
You
great
know,
pleasure. Yeah.
Nitesh, an honest confession, right? Everybody, today's time love their drinks, right? So I was actually looking forward to this discussion, and that's largely because cocktail as a space and beverage as a space, I think, is kind of exploding, right?
Yeah.
We've become so much more experimental. Last 2 years have been, well, of course, they've been very heavy, right, on the economy and people in general, right? I think that's our
Right.
lives. But I think we've just become so much more experimentative, right? I think we've started to take life a little, better. We've started to, enjoy things in the right way. And I think the
Right.
exposure has kind of exploded, right, in the last 2.5 years, right? We're
Right.
kind of accessing global content, and I think that influence is really working very well for a lot of native brands that are coming out of India, right?
Mhm.
Obey is a cocktail brand, a premium cocktail brand that you're kind of building. And like I said, right? I think India is, we've gotten to that, that mode where we start to enjoy, experimenting with, a variety of new options that are well, right?
Right.
So this becomes an exciting conversation. The premise becomes very, very exciting.
Yeah.
And you're going to cover all of that. We're going to discuss all of that through the course of the conversation, right? But Nitesh, before I do that, I'd love you to quickly introduce yourself to us, and from there on, we dive into the conversation.
Great. So thank you, Ashu. So I'll just quickly give you a brief introduction about myself. So my name is
Sure.
Nitesh Prakash. I basically came from Patna, did my schooling and upbringing there. Did my graduation from IIT Bombay, 2005 to 2010. Then
Sure.
worked with Procter and Gamble for first couple of years. That was an exciting journey working with a big corporate. I was in
Right.
their manufacturing unit for a couple of years in Goa itself. And then I did my first startup on the lines of career counseling. The idea was my
Nice.
career was not going anywhere, so thought of giving it back
Nice.
to the society. But having said that, I think it was a difficult proposition that I tried to tackle on, and we shut down that business after a year and a half after doing multiple POC. And then I joined Ola. Ola was an amazing journey, entrepreneurial journey. I was there for around 5.5, 6 years. Worked across different businesses, launched the auto businesses, scaled up the cab business, as well as launched and worked the food business as well, where we acquired
Right.
food. And that's when I think I realized the learning curve is getting flattened, and that's when I got into this alcohol industry, which I had no idea before. But it has been an exciting journey since we have launched, and there's a lot to grow, a lot to learn, and a lot to look forward to in this business as well.
Wow, super,
Yeah.
super. Nitesh, who could have thought, right? From all of what you're doing, right? Education to automobiles and to this, right? Who could have thought? This is indifferent at many levels, right? No, but I think the exciting part is, Nitesh, that last 2.5 years, especially, right? I think a lot of people got the time and opportunity to just take a step back and reevaluate. And I'm kind of surprised with a lot of professionals who did not necessarily come from a background in food, have actually switched out and are now creating some amazing food startups, right? Right, left, and center. The entire industry is getting institutionalized
Yeah.
at many levels, right? Which is very, very exciting. Now, Nitesh, we're talking of OWeb, right? Of course, I'd be very intrigued to know, what made you do this, right? I mean, were you somebody, was it, being a consumer, right? And falling in love with what was happening, or was this more opportunistic, more mathematical, right? That this is something which was kind of growing, you had an eye on it, there's more data which was available, prevalent, and we've had some data that has come out in the last, like I said, 2.5 years, right? There's been a certain growth that has happened. That made you do that. I'd love to understand the process of you entering this entire phase, right? And this is not an easy industry because there's distribution,
Yeah.
there is manufacturing, right? There are a lot of moving parts, right? There are a lot of moving variables, and it's complicated at that level. I'd love to understand, what you did and why you did that.
So yeah, it's a good journey. So Ashu, I always had the knack of cocktails, right? Like whenever friends are over, I am the one
Right.
who's making cocktails, trying and mixing. So I always
Right.
had that knack, but never looked at it as a business opportunity. And that's when I think when I was switching off Ola, I was figuring out what needs to be done. And obviously, when you network, you either drink coffee or you drink alcohol, right?
Right.
That's when I came onto this cocktail concept while visiting multiple bars and pubs. And that's when I realized that there's a huge opportunity in terms of art of mixing as well as science of consistency. Like I
Right.
love right? But there's a high chance that when I go to pubs to bars, different bars, the taste keeps changing, right?
Right.
And it's not a small or inexpensive proposition or experiment.
Right.
You pay 600, 700
Right.
bucks for that experiment, right? And it doesn't turn out to be always 100% a good experience, right? So I think that plus the costing, plus the cocktail experience overall, right, which is growing in the country. Everybody enjoys cocktails. Everybody enjoying social drinking more and more,
Right.
rather than getting drunk in the wholesome experience, right?
Right. Right.
So I think that was a combination in terms of a hobby or a knack. And in terms of looking this as an opportunity in terms of ready to drink, beverage, as you rightly said, has not been looked multiple ways, and last 2 years, 2.5 years has been a tremendous. Multiple brands have come, not only just alcoholic segment but also on the non-alcoholic segment as well. So I think there's a huge scope of growth in the overall beverage segment, overall the RTD segment, and I'm very, 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 very passionate about the overall RTD segment, either being non-alcoholic and alcoholic. So that has been the reason and that has been the process. And obviously the idea was to get my assumptions right. So we started making cocktails from my kitchen itself, start sending friends, all the cocktails, their parties in the small sample packs, etc. Right? In as small packs as possible, trying to figure out whether my product is right, whether the assumptions of cocktails in a bottle, people will like it or not. So all those experiments started happening, and I think it took me a year and a half, because I was not a part of the industry. It took me a year and a half. As you rightly said, there are huge challenges in terms of regulations. It's not an easy industry to get in, both from our regulations, operations, capital, etc. So there's a lot of roadblocks and barriers for people or anyone to get into this industry, right? And I obviously do not have any background, either retail or alcohol as well, right? So it took me a year and a half, but I think I did justice to the time. We did justice to the time. We created a very extremely good product, and people are loving the cocktails that we have made. And we will double down on the same concept, and we'll keep creating ready to drink cocktails. Yeah, so that has been great. Yeah.
Super. Now, Nitesh, I think both of us agree that this is not an easy industry, right? Now, and I'm going to refer to COVID here, right? Now, COVID has kind of changed the preferences, right? In many ways, and like I said, right, people have started to experiment. I think the numbers are already out there. Now, what is happening is that while there was this excitement, right, the world is coming back to normal, right? We're clearly not out of the woods yet, but the world is coming back to normal. Now, what that essentially means is that people will possibly go back into their tendencies, right, in a pre-sort of 2020 era, right? The only constant that continues to remain is that we've started to engage with content just so much more heavily, right? Now, what's your sense of it, right? I mean, what are you seeing? And the other thing is that when you were talking about ready to drink market, right? Example, you're essentially looking at an environment where people are kind of doing it, say, within their houses, right? And that kind of just helps the surge of sorts, right? In a way, what is also happening is that people are going back to more savvier places. Some great places are coming up, right? So there's this revenge of sorts, right? That mode is on, right? Where does that leave you, right? Is that a great situation for you, or do you think this is something which could possibly could taper down the at-home drinking market requirements? What's your sense of it? How are you looking at it?
So see, the whole way, as you rightly said, there's a revenge coming back. People are going out more and more. There's a whole lot of piggybacking on what we have missed in last 2 years in trying to concise as much small amount of time, right? But having said that, I think what I perceive is that when you look at a longer term perspective, it will continue to grow, right? It's more about how the exposure is continuously growing with time. The overall influence is getting more and more with time. The more options are available to the end consumer. Like a couple of years back, there were only 1 or 2 RTD brands available in the market. Now you look at the market is flooded with like 10, 20 RTD brands, both in the alcohol and non-alcohol. So I think it's the more options available, more experimental in nature, right? Trying to figure out what's best for them in terms of pricing, in terms of health, in terms of options available, and what is the best ROI which beverage or food and beverage can give, right? So from a long-term perspective, I do not see anything that will degrow the overall RTD segment. I think further it will grow, right? Having said that, I think from a short-term perspective, it will take some time to come to that state. It's more about more options available for the end consumer, which is happening. And I think that's a great segment to be in the current position. Like imagine gin and brands 5 years, 6 years back, right? So there were only a couple of brands, and then people started reacting to gin, how it is. Now same is happening with the RTD. In last, I think 6-7 months, numerous number of brands has come in. Obviously some will fail, some will succeed, but overall category will grow. And I think the position that we want to be is to lead that particular growth, lead that particular category, and not just India but outside as well, right? So that is where we are, and I think it's going to be an exciting journey. It's all about how we work towards it. Do we keep our promises? Do we make sure that the customers and the consumers trust us as well? So we see a lot of growth happening in the RTD segment, and OV Cocktails want to be the leader in that growth and want to lead the overall category as well. Yeah.
Interesting,
Yeah.
super. Nitish, I'm going to take a step back, right? And I'd love to understand, what are the key markets that you're going after? Are these urban markets? So I think one of the things that has also happened is that, in a way, we become a slightly more homogeneous economy, right? And that's largely because, earlier used to be because it used to be physical, right? And experiential became or experiencing a brand became a function of availability, right? Of course, that continues to be there in a beverage market, right? But essentially, what has happened is that content has kind of galvanized the economy in almost one flavor of sorts, right? It has also brought in some predictability, but eccentricity, right, from a consumption trend. But that's also important, right? Now, what's your sense of it? I mean, what are your key markets that are you kind of prioritizing? Right? Of course, there are urban markets are definitely understood better, right? The demand is more predictable. But what are the kind of tendencies that you're seeing in tier 2 and tier 3 markets, right? Tier 3, I think it's going to be a little too early, but I'd love to understand, how we're looking at tier 2 markets, right? And is that part of the three key growth strategy in phase 1 of your the plans that you have? I'd love to understand that.
Sure, that's a fair question, Ashu. So, the idea is that obviously every company picks up the customers or the consumers who are easy to target, who are easy to convert into their proposition, into their brand, right? So that's what we're trying to do. Step 1 is to reach out to all the urban consumers, right? Who understands cocktail, who understands what we are trying to do, right?
Sure.
And for them, there's a value proposition, and what we're trying to do is to create a good house entertainment experience for the social gatherings at home, right? That's our value proposition. That's the direction that we are trying to take, and that is the phase 1, that we are trying to educate the customers on the RTD concept of the cocktails. One who understand cocktails, one who drink cocktails, and we're just giving them a ready-to-drink format for them to enjoy that experience back at home, which they cannot today, right? Then there will be stage 2, when there will be education stage that will come in for people who do not drink cocktails, for people who do not understand cocktails, right? And that will actually penetrate the market in a much more depth, in a much more scalable and valuable format. So we are just touching and scratching the surface at the moment. That's what I feel. There's a lot to grow. There's a lot to go in depth. And we have started with one brand, which is cocktail brand. And obviously with time, we'll get into multiple other brands, catering to multiple other consumer segments. We are catering to a premium consumer segment who understands and drink cocktails. Tomorrow we'll get into other segments. For example, a CEO who only drinks single malt with ice, right? Or single malt with soda, right? Similar, the idea is to get into multiple categories because it will require that kind of intervention for the overall category to grow. And OB Cocktails has been determined to go in that direction, to be the RTD category leader in the country, and that is the direction. Yeah, super. So it's a step-wise approach, and we are just scratching the surface. We'll go as we move along and learn along the process as well.
I completely agree. Nitesh. I think it is a much larger market than possibly we can. I think we just get too occupied in our own lives, right? To understand how diverse India is, right? You come from a tier 2 city, I come from a tier 2 city, and and I think you just sort of look back and then you realize, what layers that exist, right? But the good part is that these are massive markets in themselves, right? Which offer some amazing opportunities of growth, right? Now, there's one thing that I want to understand, right? The other piece that I want to understand, right? It's also a very critical challenge, right? Now, as soon as you are in the category which is alcohol, closer to alcohol, right? The distribution system is very skewed, right? It's largely dependent on state-defined shops, distribution mechanics, right? There's a lot of licensing, for example, that comes into play, so on and so forth, right? And you have no choice as a brand but to either be within that ecosystem or just be kind of very strongly leverage that ecosystem, right? Now the behavioral tendencies of that ecosystem are very different, right? How is that? How are you doing that? Do you qualify as a cocktail brand within pretty much the same regulatory aspects that any other alcohol brand would, or do you have a leeway there that gets you a slightly more space to maneuver faster and better?
So it's a mix of both, Ashu. There are, as you rightly said, every state has different regulations, and India as an overall country has multiple countries inside when it comes to alcohol space. You change the boundary, you change the regulations, accounting, duties, everything changes, right? So that's what I think my first year and a half went into, to understand the bit of regulations, to understand the bit of complexities that is there as a part of the business ecosystem, right? Sure. And that makes it good and bad in both for any businesses. Good because once you get in, it becomes easy for you to understand and maneuver your path because you understand the system, you know the people and learn from the people, grow in that direction and learn from those people who has been doing this forever. Like Alcobev is a like 5 years, 6 old decade industry in India at least, right? So there are people who understand things. You just need to get into the right set of environment to learn from them and to go in that direction. Right. The bad part is obviously the moment you get into it's very difficult for new players to come in, right? So that's a roadblock, that's a challenge that comes in. But I think the ecosystem overall is developing. There are a lot of changes that is happening at the regulation side in favor of the brands, in favor of the end consumers, in favor of the distribution and the retail shops as well. So overall, I think in last 3 years, I've seen what it was 3 years and what it is right now. But there's a lot of changes that is happening across the regulations. People are becoming more accepted. People are getting into newer brands, and regulations are accepting that there are newer brands, different kind of challenging brands that will come, which was not written as a part of their excise books, as a part of their excise handbooks. So there will be continuous changes that keeps on happening. And I think that is happening across, not just the brands who are bringing new brands or people who are coming, as you rightly said, new people are coming into this industry, but also from the regulations and government books as well, where they are accepting these changes and making those changes available for the end consumer to enjoy these innovations, to enjoy the new brands that can make changes to the overall consumer consumption pattern or experimenting pattern, things like that. So I think the things are changing across, and I am personally very, very happy that we are in that phase where things are changing very, very fast. Maybe because of COVID, or maybe because of so much experimentation is happening around, maybe because a lot of people are getting into this space. But yes, a lot of changes are happening, and I'm happy that I'm a part of those fast changes.
But tell me this, right? So your retailing is currently dependent on this infrastructure of liquor shops that is there, or can you exist outside, right? When you look at a lot of other brands, right, which are essentially mixes and they're non-alcoholic, right? For them distribution is just so much more different, right? They can access all of for example, the entire retail framework, for example, right? They can exist in many formats, right? Now that gives them more visibility, higher offtake possibilities, right? So the combinations for them are very, very different, right? Plus lesser regulations. Are you dependent as a brand on, for example, these shops to retail yourself? Can you build a direct-to-consumer relationship? Go-off example is very, very neat, right? In terms of distribution possibilities, right? But is that, or do you have such leeways across other states as well, or that's not really the case right now?
Sure. Okay, I'll give you both the perspectives of mine. So see, alcohol is a very, very old school thought process that has been there evolved. So it will take some time to change that thought process overall. But look at from a point of that why there are limited shops or why there are limited retails, because there is negative aspect to the alcohol consumption as well, right? That is where the accessibility has been very, very limited, that it cannot be accessed by every nook and corner similar to a mom and pop stores, right? So that is where the control has to come in. Some control has to come in, and I think the thought process has been very, very right in terms of controlling the consumption. Otherwise, it will become similar to water and milk, right? Which is not right, which is not the right way of putting this. The people should enjoy the drinking rather than going into the negative phase of it, right? That's what the whole proposition of limiting the retail shops are. The good part is that we have a limited set of touch points to work with. People will come to those touch points irrespective of whether they are outside. So you must have seen the lines that was outside the COVID time, right? The moment lockdown started, there was a lot of lines, queues outside the shops. So that tells that it's a good thing as well, because there's a limited touch points for people to access to, and that also helps the brand because you have limited places to work with, limited customers to work with, and it gives you that leverage, that advantage to work with those limited touch points, and your overall consumption per retail increases, right? So it's not just the distribution but also going in depth of that particular retail. So that is the one story of it. Second story of it, it obviously gives a lot of options and positions and in terms of distribution visibility, because all these cocktail mixers, tonic waters, etc. gets much more advantages to in terms of distribution. The only justice to that is that everyone who buys this tonic water mixers do have to buy alcohol, so they have to go to the shops to purchase their alcohol from, right? So whether the distribution is 10, 20, 100 times better than us, but it is a huge dependency on the those retail shops where we are present, where we have the limited access to. So yes, there are good and bad parts of the entire things. But I think it's a fairly good call in terms of, because we are in the right places. We don't have to work with so many touch points. People, it's a privileged place to be in, right? Let's call it that. The retail has a privileged license, and people come to the retail and they procure us instead of we reaching out to every nook and corner, etc. So it's good and bad. I think for us, the focus is to develop that relationship with the retailers, develop that relationship with the distributors and the customers, and go in depth of every retail shop that is possible there. Yeah. So
Interesting. Nitesh, another very big challenge, right? I think everybody that you speak with the alcohol business, right, continues to sort of, this is just such a teething trouble, right? You really cannot go out and advertise. You have to do surrogates, right? Pretty much all the time. Now, is that a problem that exists for you as well? Because that becomes a very severe handicap to go out and build that relationship, right? I mean, every alcohol brand has a they're using a surrogate of either doing mineral water or packaged drinking water or sodas, right? Kind of just wrapping it around in a variety of different ways, right? Without, of course, of alcohol, and I think which is at a societal level, I think which I think we understand, right? But that's a massive trouble. How do you see that? Because at the end of the day, even if you're at a retail point, right, people will only pick you up when you are visible, right? And when you have a limitation where you cannot really go out and kind of very straight up talk of what you're doing, there are a lot more misses that hits, right? What's how are you tackling that one?
So, fair question. So, I think surrogate regulations is also changing, FYI. I don't know what is the change, but that is also changing in terms of overall way of looking at surrogate advertising for alcohol beverage space. But having said that, I think coming back to the problem statement that obviously we cannot engage with customers as much as non-alcohol brands and other categories can do. Sure. I think social media has been really helpful in that presence, right? As you rightly said in the beginning, that how do I bring out who we are, what we are trying to do. So I think social media has been helpful in terms of reaching out to the customers. Overall, if you look at space as well, more and more spends and more presence of customers is going on the digital side as well, right? And I think we are in the right place to be in, where social media / digital is going to be the much more wider space of talking to the customers, engaging with the customers, and having that recall from the customers for them to remember OB Cocktails as a cocktail brand, right? So I think we are doubling down on the social media, especially Instagram, where you can portray what we are trying to do. And for us, the value proposition has been saying that we want to be a convenient cocktail experience from day one, and that is the message that we are trying to pass on to the end consumer. And obviously, the channel is limited, but again, it gives us immense opportunity and help, because you double down on that particular social media channel, or you double down on because you don't have any other option. So you learn and you do it, right? Instead of trying and experimenting with ATL, with hoardings, boardings, etc. You know what works. It has been worked for other brands as well. You just need to understand how it will work for you. So it is working well for us, and people have been loving our brand. People are reaching out on our social media channels, etc., to tell us how good the brand is, how good their experience has been in terms of drinking the right cocktail at home, right? Getting that experience is also very, very important. So we are in the terms of increasing that brand awareness, telling people who we are. So it has been a good journey, and we are focusing very, very limited on a specific set of channels to engage with the customers as well.
Interesting. Yeah. I can, when you're saying what you're saying, right? In my mind, the way I'm kind of visualizing is that, we continue to drink what we drink, right? And it gets boring beyond a certain point, right? I think having a place like yourself, right? I think it just brings in a different kind of a face, right? It just brings in a different kind of excitement, right? I think that's essentially what you possibly also focusing on, and I think that's the consumer today, right? They want that excitement, they want that that fizz. Exactly. That way, right? Which is so much more important. Now, Nitesh, another very, very big challenge in the industry, right? In this industry. And sorry, I'm talking about a lot of challenges, but I'm going to move to the good side of it, right? Just a bit. Now, the other very, very big challenge, Nitesh, is that manufacturing continues to be very, very inconsistent, right? And that's largely because you're dependent on certain quality of groundwater, or and to sort of get it right, to get the taste right. Now, a lot of brands struggle with this, right? That experience continues to sort of just be slightly more different. Of course, there's a lot of standardization that is happening. There's a lot of example, now within also manufacturing, there are, for example, a variety of equipments available, right, that help you get that consistency, right? But it's still a very, very complicated process, right? If you're also centralizing your manufacturing, then distribution again becomes a massive thing, right? For a beverage business to sort of scale, that's one of the most trickiest the most complex parts, right?
Right.
How are you solving for that? Or at least you're in an early phase, right? So possibly not a very fair question, but I'm sure you would have visualized this in your mind, right? In terms of your growth plans, right? How are you looking at some of that?
So, fair question. So, Ashu, the idea is behind manufacturing is to develop that capability of manufacturing in-house. What we are trying to do is to develop that manufacturing / R&D capability in-house. So, all the entire journey, my first year and a half, I brought my entire PhD experience to understanding how manufacturing works. So we have the right systems, we created the right SOPs in place on day one, right? Which does not happen in a startup environment because they don't want to get into that systematic fixes, right? People want to make short gap fixes and then keep moving on. What we did, because being a beverage brand and being rightly a food and beverage brand, the product goes rightly into the consumer's stomach, right? So you can't mess with it. You have to be right from day one, right? So we created the right SOPs, right systems in place, all the in-house capability that we can develop. We are working on that to develop everything in-house, right? Obviously, the manufacturing capability will be completely different and there will be new things that will come up. But for us, it's to be very, very important to streamline the entire manufacturing process, streamline the entire blending process, ensuring that right ingredient goes in the right proportion. It does not harm anyone, right? So we have worked the first year and a half into ensuring that the right ingredients are picked, ensuring that the right formula is blended in. We have a mixologist as well on our panel who decides the final texture of the drink, final aroma of the drink, final taste of the drink, how the customers will take the second sip, etc. So all those scientific methodologies has been adopted from day one, right? And we are trying to work on it to ensure that we follow that same methodologies and systems that we created on day one and keep evolving that systems and methodologies to ensure that the cocktails or the vision of having that great cocktail experience stays consistent throughout our journey and mostly evolves with time, mostly evolves the definition of what cocktail experience means to us, right? So that is the final goal. But yeah, the whole idea is to keep that consistency in the thought process as well as in the execution. And we have been fairly succeeded in that direction. And I think we'll keep going in that direction to ensure that the right consumer experience is delivered to the end consumer and we maintain our promises and the trust to the end consumer. Yeah. Amazing.
And Nitesh, we're towards the end of a conversation, right? And all good things have to come to an end, and so does this one, right? At least the first phase of a conversation, right?
Yeah.
I'd love to continue to have many more, but this one has to come to an end, right? Now, before I let you go, I'd love to understand, you just raised a lot of capital, right? In a bad market. So I think one, how has that experience been? Second, what are the next 2.5 years like? What are some of the things that you're prioritizing? I consciously did not ask you about unit economics, right? Because I think it's too early in the business for that feasibility sort of happen, right? But how do you see it playing out in the next couple of months? Because now you've gotten to a point where a lot more standardization is going to kick in. You're going to be expanding, across multiple geographies. Now, how are you breaking it down? I'd love to understand that, right? I mean, are you looking at unit economics state-wise because there are a lot of these regulations that come in, or are you looking at it at a company level, right? Or both, right? What's the sense on that front? I'd love to understand that.
So funding has been a great experience. I think because of the bad market, it was both easy and difficult for us. The good part is that half of the money or the half of the funds that came in was from the existing investors as well, right? So that was the confidence that the investors generated in us in terms of the direction that we took, in terms of the growth numbers that we were able to achieve in that short span of time. So that was the easy part, and once the existing investors come in, it becomes very easy for you to convert the new investors, right? So I think it was not too difficult for us because of the confidence, the deliverables that we are able to deliver to the existing and to the new investors, right? So we were able to bridge this round in just a couple of months. And the idea and the fundraise we did was basically, as you rightly said, use this money to reach to a certain extent, right? I want to expand it to pan-India level using this money as much as possible. So the growth curve has been very, very it's very clear to us. The idea is to reach out to all the pan-India consumers, cocktail consumers specifically, work on the distribution, and then double down on the brand and marketing, right? So it's a pure play where consumers, as you rightly said, should see the brands visible, should engage with the brands as much as possible, right? That recall value is very, very important. So the journey is, we will want to focus a lot on the sales and distribution for next 6 months. And then the idea is to work on the brand and marketing on a very, very large pan-India level. And that's where the actual growth, actual depth down growth will come in, where every beer consumer, will drink cocktails tomorrow. That's the direction we're going to take it. So we will be in your city very soon. And the idea is to keep reaching out to the right consumers and keep educating them with time, what we are trying to do and what we are trying to achieve. So yeah,
I would
put my cocktails in my hand and yours.
Absolutely, and I would love to see a shift of wine drinkers to cocktails, right? I mean, honestly speaking, I swear to God, I'm not a big fan, right? I find it really, I don't know, very not an exciting sort of for. And I would love to see many of them switch out to to a cocktail environment, right? I think it's so much more exciting, right? You can experiment so much. There are many flavors, right? You can have a drink for a day, right? Which just makes it so much more amazing, right? Now, Nitesh, last question, slightly more cliched, right? A little off, the core discussion that we've been having, right? Is that every founder has a very unique journey, right? And you've built a very, very exciting business, right? And building Ola, I mean, there are possibly very few who can rave of being in a zone like that, right? And building a business, right? Which has changed the way the mobility kind of was in India, right? The way we used to book our cabs. A massive shift, right? That we've seen, right? And a massive success story. Now, from that to moving out and then putting this effort and starting out from scratch, right? This is not easy, right? At any level whatsoever, right? While you with a smile, you're making it sound just so much more simple and so much more leaner, right? I understand beverage businesses. I know for a fact that this is one of the most challenging and difficult businesses to sort of get into, right? Any advice? There are many people, right? Now, why do I want to do that, right? It's because there are many people who are on the fence, right? And for a variety of reasons, don't cross over, right? I think inputs from you, your personal experiences will possibly help some of them at least cross over, right? And I think, we'll just be this is going to be such a bigger service, right? We're going to have from employees, we're going to have employment creators, and generators, right? So what's your advice to many people who are on the fence, Nitesh, who I don't know, not crossing over? What advice do you want to give them?
Yeah. So I think, Ashu, entrepreneurship is all about understanding your own self, right? It's all about doing everything, figuring out what are your weaknesses, what are your own opportunities where you need to learn and grow. So I think last 3 years has been a self-awareness kind of a campaign that has been running for me, by me, right? And I think it has been a great journey because you learn to understand, because you see everything, you do everything, right? Like I read somebody when someone said that from 0 to 1, it's a founder that runs the entire show, right? And when you do that, you see everything, you do everything, whether it is branding, sales, distribution, regulations, manufacturing, right? So you tend to learn more about yourself, right? And I think it's that learning period for anyone to come to, right? Because it gives you that opportunity that, boss, okay, I don't want to do this, I lack in this, etc. So overcome those challenges, right? So for me, it has been extremely self-development kind of a journey, and I think that journey will continue, because I think with time, more and more different kind of challenges will come, and I have to. There's no second thought to it. There's no shortcut to it, right? So I think that is one take that I will take from this entire journey. It's a self-awareness, it's a self-development, and I think everyone should do it at least once in their life, to see what they are, to see what they're capable of, to sleep, whether they're able to sleep in time, whether they're able to get up in the morning with the same energy that they did yesterday morning, right? So I think that is the most challenging part of this entire entrepreneurship journey. Somebody said to me that, boss, the moment you get up, an entrepreneur's journey is half one, right? And the rest half is throughout the day. So I think that is the last thing I want to say. It's something that everyone should experience at least once in their lifetime, to understand who they are as a person, rather than just doing what they are in a daily.
Amazing.
Yeah. Thank you.
Amazing. Nitesh, this has been absolutely spectacular. I think one thing which has stood out, right? I'm still to try and test the brand, right? But I think one thing which has stood out in this conversation I think has been your infectious enthusiasm, right? And I think that is the differentiator, right? That sets apart, from great founders and great businesses to the rest, right? This has been absolutely spectacular. Thank you so much for doing this, right? And and my sense is, this is a market which is very, very exciting, and you're going to create with all of this enthusiasm that you have, right? And the focus that you have, right? More importantly, the shift is very, very clear. I think you'll definitely go out and create a very, very big dent with Ome. We wish you all the very best, and looking forward to catch up soon, right? And cheers to the moment. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you, Ashu. Thank you for your time. It's great. We would love to do this again. The idea is to keep educating customers about who we are, what we are doing, about the category itself. And yes, we'll cheers to OB cocktails next time when we're meeting together. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
All the best.